How does dancing relate to writing? How much do you know about dance and ballet? For those who know nothing about ballet, beginners start off by the basic moves and then gradually improve and learn more through practice and performances. At the very end of all the classes, the ballerinas prepare themselves to perform at a recital which reflects their final skills. I can relate my style of writing with my ballet experience. When writing a new piece of literature, I feel like a beginner who is trying to learn the first steps, then improve through practice and mistakes, and finally perform the final skills at a recital. Writing is like standing on pointe shoes. At first you struggle to stand on your toes, but then you get the hang of it and eventually master it. What I struggled the most with writing was linking the theses to each of the paragraphs and also coming up with transitions. On the other hand, my strengths in writing were to come up with a hook, an introduction, and a conclusion. During my English 1101 class, I wrote 3 essays in total. The first essay included descriptions and evidences I found from a picture of a reality show. For my second essay, I made a video in which I described an episode from the reality show. And the third essay was an autobiography shown through a video. The first exhibit in my portfolio was Life of a Teenage Mother. For this exhibit, I perceived the explicit evidence shown on the image I chose to describe. After I spotted out the evidences, I developed them fully by explaining how they link to the thesis statement. In ballet, when the teacher demonstrates the moves, she does not develop the moves fully because she expects us to recognize them already. Therefore, it is our job to fully develop them. This first exhibit demonstrates how I primarily struggled with coming up with transitions and connecting the thesis statement to the evidences, but I can also acknowledge that I improved through my mistakes. After writing my first exhibit, I used my mistakes to write a better second essay, which was my essay on Teen Mom 2, Episode 12, Judgment Day, where I created a video to display my opinions through my voice recordings. While writing this essay, I tried not to make the same mistakes I made in the first essay. I commented on how some of the teenage mothers in the reality show suffer more than others. I mentioned how I thought that some of them did not have full support from their families, therefore they suffer more. This connects with dancing because when ballerinas do not have strength on their ankles, they collapse. These mothers can be considered as the ballerinas, and the families can be considered as the ankles of each ballerina. If these mothers do not have full support from their families, then they collapse as well. For the peer review exhibit, I reviewed Hyesun Kim's paper. Hyesun's paper was interesting, especially from the beginning, where she had her hook. When reviewing her paper, I felt I was teaching a group of beginner ballerinas who needed help to improve. I gained experience reviewing her paper because when reviewing someone else's paper, I would be naive enough to consider them good and not spot any of their mistakes. Now, when I am assigned to review someone else's paper, I read them more carefully and note their grammatical errors. Also, when reviewing their papers, I learn from their mistakes as they are the same mistakes I would make when writing a paper. It is like correcting other ballerinas' dance moves, but I would make the same mistakes and so they would correct me. In other words, reviewing someone else's paper is like giving them feedback on what they need to improve on and vice versa. After reviewing Hyesun's paper, I revised my own paper. I revised my first paper because I had improved drastically after revising it. When writing this paper, I received useful feedback on how to improve it, which is how you improve in ballet as well. When dancing the wrong moves, you receive constructive criticism from the teacher or from other fellow ballerinas. When revising my paper carefully, I noticed why I did not get a good grade when I first handed it in. I then revised my second paper and I spotted out all the grammar mistakes I could and the missing transitions, being one of my weaknesses. I also noticed that I did not link my thesis statement to my body paragraphs appropriately. When dancing, all the moves have to connect in order to make the dance flow smoothly, just like in writing. When paragraphs do not have transitions nor thesis statements in them, they do not flow appropriately. For my wild card, I recorded myself dancing ballet and connected it to my writing. While dancing, I demonstrated how I made a few mistakes to improve by getting feedback from the teacher who corrected my moves. This connects to writing an essay because when writing, the professor points out the grammar mistakes in an essay, and it helps me to improve and understand where they went wrong. Writing many essays during my English 1101 class has helped me improve drastically. Before, I was not very familiar with transitions nor with thesis statements. Practice does make a change in both writing and dancing. I have learned how to improve by making mistakes and understanding why they were wrong. In writing, whenever I made a mistake, I would get feedback from my professor, who would then explain why I made the mistake. It is the same with dancing. My teacher would correct me whenever I made the wrong moves.